All right, so let's go back to the story. Our reporter Neria Hlakotsa has been tracking the developments around the trial involving Ket Matlala and others in court, and it is, of course, day 2. So lots to talk about as far as the first witness is concerned, and also what are some of the contentions in court. Neria, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. Perhaps we start with, even before we get into Mzamocele in just a moment, but there was that moment around whether or not footage could be used, video footage in court, etc. What was that about?
Good evening to you, Bonyo, and thank you for having me. Well, essentially, the state now wanted to present the video footage of the shooting incident that happened in 2022. But then the defense objected, and successfully so, against that footage, saying that they don't know whether this footage is AI. It needs first an expert to authenticate it before it can be put as evidence in court. And the state was simply saying in this regard, I don't want to use it as yet. I just want the witness, who's Bethwell Cele, to just identify himself in the video. But successfully so, the defense managed to not have that video as evidence at this point in time.
So what do we know about Bethwell Mzamocele?
He was the security guard at the time in 2022. This is when Joe Sibanyoni, the businessman, was shot at. But we are yet to first hear the name Joe Sibanyoni come out of the state's mouth at this point, because the state is just painting a picture of a scene, and we still don't know who is in the scene. But when you look at their previous evidence that they put in court, it was that Joe Sibanyoni was shot at outside the Golf Estate in Centurion, and this is what Bethwell is also talking about. He was the security guard at the time. He's talking about how a white BMW came, and the occupants of the white BMW then fired at the occupants of a Ferrari and a Golf. Remember, Joe Sibanyoni is known as Joe Ferrari Sibanyoni. So if you piece this together, we still want to know who was in that Ferrari and that night, and who was in the Golf, because he's saying that some of the occupants in the Golf were actually even injured as the shooting happened. You know, when he describes this incident, Bonyo, I want to tell you, he even became emotional. He's saying the place was riddled with bullets. It was, everybody had to fend for themselves. He says for himself, as a security guard, he even had to fire 15 shots just to make sure that he fights these men who had AK-47s. We are yet to know who they are, but remember, the state is saying it's accused number 1 and 2 who are the alleged gunmen in this whole situation.
And as you talk about him being emotional, he describes the fact that he says he was also narrowly missed by some of the bullets there. But it's interesting that he speaks about what, he says he describes as one of the gunmen climbing through a window.
Yes. So he says he was proud, in fact, to even say to the court, he managed to chase them away by bullets, by using bullets, because he was firing at them. Some of them even, they then had to go inside the car quickly. One of them tried coming out, and as he was firing, the other one even made a sound to say, ah, and this is what he thinks that, he even made the sound, in fact, in court, to say he think he hit one of the gunmen. He might have shot at one of those alleged gunmen, but essentially it was, like he said, that scene, he'll never forget it. He says it's only the next morning when he woke up and thought, I could have died. This scene was unbelievable. He even says people were not even leaving the estate as a result. It's only people who were entering, but people who were inside the estate were even afraid to just be at that scene at the time.
And who was in the court gallery? Because I know day 1 was quite a buzz.
Yes.
We saw quite a number of notable faces, including, one of the alleged victims in this particular trial, that is Demeanor Tobejane. We also saw Joe Ferrari himself in court. So today, who was in the gallery?
Remember, in fact, it was a mistake that was done yesterday by having the victims in court. And this was addressed already by the defense to say, can we make sure there's no victim in court today, because evidence is now being laid. So we did see Joe Sibanyoni around the court precinct. And it's important for us to mention this because the state is now dealing around the case of his shooting. So this means he might be called at any time. So probably the state has said that he must come every day, but he can't be inside court. So the court, basically, it was people who are there to just look at the proceedings as they happen. And of course, the media, it's an entourage of them, but no witnesses in court.
Before I let you go, describe the demeanor of the accused for us today.
Look, it seems this case has been going on since last year, since the arrest of Matlala and all 4 of them. Initially, you could see they were not really feeling these charges. But yesterday, after they were made to plead, you could then see the seriousness in their faces that now these charges are serious. And ever since the pleading part of this whole trial, they are all just focusing. Remember, the judge even yesterday said, I'm going to give you guys books. This is your trial. You must listen so that you can defend yourself when you have to. Don't sit there and think about your future or think about going to jail. Use this opportunity to fight for yourself. And you can see they're focused right now. They're listening to everything. They even speaking to their lawyers here and there all the time. They would call their lawyers to the side and. So you can see they're now seeing the seriousness of this case, especially after they were told it could be 15 years in prison or even more.
And quite interesting, a stark contrast from what we would see when you started going to court, because it looked like things could be postponed and they didn't really take this matter seriously. But now, as you describe it, let's see then what happens. But appreciate that update there. My colleague Neria Hlakotsa wrapping the day for us as far as the trial is concerned.